games are officially underway. Wesley So starts with the white pieces. We get a Sicilian. Down, I'm 0% surprised about the opening because I just saw a young Krysztof Duda use this against Fabiano Caruana game after game.
And I remember JKD playing this as far back as I remember how the under 18 World Youth. I think when I was playing the under 14, I think he might have been playing the under 10, and he was already playing the Najdorf. This guy is an expert in the truest sense of the word in the Najdorf, but knight c6. Now, am I hallucinating, or is this a very uncommon way to develop the knight in the Najdorf?
Yeah, and I think knight a5. This I have not seen.
I guess the knight's going to c4.
Well, if you allow me, my knight will gladly hop right in here with the bishop's defense, and actually he lets it happen.
Knight c5, maybe knight c4, knight c5. I've seen that's an old school idea, exploiting that pin against the d6 pawn to situate the knight on c5.
Right, you're saying that there is a queen in line with the rook, so the rook wins that battle most of the time. So knight c5 is possible here, but Duda goes for it anyway. And Danya, I think this goes to show that allowing a capture on e6 and replacing it with a pawn, that's typically not the biggest deal because you're trying to fight tooth and nail for that d5 square, right?
Exactly. That plays right into black's hand. It's important to recognize the rules for determining pawn structures in the Najdorf, as you hinted at, Robert, are completely different. You're fighting really over squares here, and it's not about the aesthetic appeal of your pawns. And that's why we see Wesley sliding his bishop away. The fight over the d5 square is on.
And Donna, I have to say that I like the knight at c4 a lot better than I would if it were on d7. I'm just going to drag the piece over the square, which is where it goes often. You go knight d7, you bring a rook to c8, you bring your bishop to e7. Very calm, sort of natural developing moves, no huge risks in the early stages. But I like this knight on c4 because watch out for a potential sacrifice on b2. Of course, not right now. You have to line up some pressure on the knight on c3 with a rook on c8 and all that good stuff. But I see a knight on c4. I just store that information. Knight takes b2 at some point, maybe a possibility.
Maybe slide the queen away to e1 and try to capture that knight before it wreaks any havoc on the position. Because if you play queen f2 here, you might come under some knight takes c4 business. Instead, Wesley sliding his king over. So rook c8, the kind of move that would be conducive to an idea that you mentioned, Robert. But I feel like Wesley's holding this in store. The idea of going queen e1 and taking on c4. Knight takes c4 here needs to be calculated. No, it doesn't work because of queen e4. So Duda does put something on the c file.
Yeah, I actually want to bring up the analysis board and show what Danya was talking about. It's a very good point. When you see a bishop like here in line with another bishop, right? These bishops are staring each other down. You have to watch out for tactics. So for example, if this queen went to f2 at some point, let's say here, you have to just look, is there a knight g4 type of move, opening up the bishop's attack on one another and hitting the queen on f2. So those ideas are all in the air, and Danya pointed it out correctly. Instead, we saw queen e1, which was Danya's move, and taking on c4. And let me ask you, now that the b file is open, how much do you like the fact that you were able to take this knight off the board?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one of White's classical ideas here is go knight d2, knight f1, knight e3. But I also want a filet mignon steak from Ruth's Chris Steakhouse right now, and I'm not going to get it. So Duda might have something to say about this by putting a rook on b8 and maybe a queen on b7. And the issue is that Wesley has to be very careful about how he defends the b2 pawn. If he goes b3, Duda's going to sack on b3 and checkmate him. Maybe he wants to drop his bishop back to c1, but that entails that has its own problems. Maybe d5. This gets very double-edged.
Yeah, and I saw the eval bar just jump in Duda's favor. And we'll just sit on the position for a moment here. We'll kind of think about it from a broader point of view. And Daniel, this knight went to f1, like you said, trying to get to e3 into this d5 square. If we talk about ideal strategy, White would love to take on f6 and then immediately put this knight on to the d5 square and play knight against bishop. You often hear bishops are better than knights, but not when the knight has a clear outpost. And a knight on d5 against a dark squared bishop means that the knight is going to be the superior piece. But that is several moves away. And as you just pointed out, Danya, moves like queen to b7, and then maybe in an eventual d5. You always have to be on the lookout for this d5 move. It's critical in the Sicilian. And if this bishop can land on a3 to increase the pressure down the b file, that would be a big problem.
Right. And Duda realizes that the d5 square isn't everything, because even if Wesley positions a knight on d5, let's say knight e to d5, and Duda takes it with his knight, he's going to have the idea of going bishop to g5, trying to distract that bishop on c1 from its critical role. That bishop on c1, it's like Atlas. It's holding the world on its shoulders. And if Duda can distract it, that could lead to some major problems with the b2 pawn. So I would consider knight d7 in this position, trying to include the knight in the attack, maybe also knight e8, knight c7, but opening up that line of negotiation between the dark squared bishop and the g5 square instead. Duda going full on frontal assault, getting the rook to b6. All right.
Yeah, this is he makes his intentions very clear. He's saying,
does.
I'm tripling. I am going to sack on b2 if you allow me for mate. And a big issue, as you highlighted earlier, is b3 is not a possibility for white because you do have 2 pawns protecting the square, but I also have a bishop in prime location to just sacrifice itself on b3. So when I play rook b6, you'll have to find another way to defend b2, and knight a4 will not satisfy white's position because after rook b6, I also have rook to b4, just trying to kick this knight out. So already I believe Wesley is in for a tough decision. He plays knight into d5, but what if you just capture it like you said and then swing a rook to b6 and try to get that bishop in g5?
Well, I guess maybe he wants bishop takes d5 ed, and then rook b6 he wants to take on c4. So Duda keeping the tension instead with bishop to d8. Okay, so I guess what if Wesley plays g5 here or something to that effect? I think I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to get a pulse on the position. What does Duda want to do? Maybe he just wants to leave the knight on d5 entirely, just go knight d7.
That's
I don't know,
an idea you mentioned before, and well, Wesley doesn't allow it to begin with. But knight d5 is met by bishop g5. You pointed out this idea earlier.
Yeah, but maybe on the other hand, rook b6 is going to be met with queen c3. He goes queen c3 preemptively. But that queen could also be a sitting duck if, let's say, bishop could land on a5 and that square could be supported somehow. So maybe queen b5 and bishop d8, bishop a5, something like that.
It's a bit of a trek to make this all work, but it's good to think in these terms of how do I improve my bishop, right? The bishop on f6 staring into its own pawn. The best move for black is pawn e5 thrown off board, and then that's that.
Yeah, if only we could. Imagine how much that would change chess.
You just say, hey,
one of your own pieces.
Let's get that out the way because my bishop on f6.
Or bishop takes e5. That would be a great move.
Well, isn't that a new variant? You can capture your own pieces?
I was gonna say, I think I heard about that. But you could also do that over the board. Just kind of pretend, I'm doing you a favor. For God's sake, I'm taking my own pieces. Now, wow, c3 here is a very tempting move. But then Wesley could play b3, and that pawn on b3 is significantly more solid than it would be with a pawn on c4.
Right.
This is really heating. I mean, this is just like a pressure cooker in here. It doesn't seem like that much is happening, but the stakes are incredibly high for both sides in this position.
You're mentioning pressure cookers. You're mentioning steaks. Are you hungry, Danya? Like, what's going on here?
No, I got some granola here and some coffee. You don't have to worry about me, Robert. I got all the best food that the Bay Area has to offer.
I worry because I care, Danya, just so you know.
I know. I care about you too, Robert. Just as we look at this incredibly tense position, I need to waste everyone's time and just say this. Robert needs that.
Words of affirmation, those are poured the most.
Indeed. And finally a knight on d5.
He needed it because otherwise that bishop was coming to c5 where the queen gets trapped over here.
Okay, so can Duda get his bishop to one of these golden squares? b4. Oh, and if he moves it, by the way, knight e7 check has to be reckoned with. That's a fork. And then d6 is going to topple. Look at the time also, 30 seconds. I feel like Duda has let this go. Maybe rook c4, tries to get his a-pawn in motion. Wesley's position, not easy either. It's not clear how to make progress here. Duda
I like that.
Pawn to a4.
I like that rook c4 idea as well because you're trying to trap the queen, but the d6 pawn will be hanging. So also Duda down to 30 seconds as well as he's been playing. You can't win good positions if we consider his position good now without time on the clock and down to 27 seconds. And now he's sort of on the defensive, right, Danya? He put his rooks on the C file where they're not barreling through. They're just protecting the pawn that's gone too far.
Yes, and h6. He hasn't forgotten about the idea of bishop g5. Wesley could drop his knight back at some point and go after the d6, but I wouldn't do that yet. I would try to make more improvements to my position, but that's very hard to do in this atmosphere. Maybe bishop e3, queen c1, try to retool your pieces. The problem is, if you fall asleep, Duda plays a4, and then the attack is reinvigorated. So it's a very hard environment to make any sorts of improvements. The players are at a standstill here. H3, king h7, both trying to make small improvements in the position, and Wesley strikes with f4.
So I like king h7 for the end game, but f4 is dangerous because if some pieces get traded off, I look at that e4 pawn. It's isolated. It can be attacked. But for now,
C4.
Here comes the d6 pawn is weak and the rook's in the d file. Who's this easier to play for?
I have no idea. Actually, have no idea. I think on one hand, black, because black can make the attacking moves, but his position is kind of collapsing too. He's got 8 seconds. Got to move a4 maybe just to add some Tabasco sauce to that queen side. He does it. He gives up the b4 square. Bishop e7 by Wesley, maybe to take some pieces off the board while he has a chance. The problem is the a file, though. If it gets opened, Duda can double on that file and deliver a lobster pincer mate, sort of, on a1.
Yeah, that's a good call. And you can't take on a4 like you would in other variations because the bishop is now under attacking. Queen b4, offering the queen trade, just sliding the queen back. Watch out for ab, bishop d5, rook b6. All of these type of attacking moves. And look at the clock. Wesley under 15 seconds now.
Retreating moves. AB and rook a8. He's got something to the a file.
He nervously plays bishop e5 and trade. Okay, rook a8.
Rook a8. Queen
a2?
Queen a2 and bishop g5.
Bishop g5.
That's going to be mate. He does this first.
Still 93 back, but queen a2 for sure.
Wesley on the left. He's got to move 2 seconds.
He
attacks the knight first, trying to get it out. Bishop d4. There'll be queen a2.
Queen a2. Play queen
bishop
a2.
B3. Bishop b3. Oh, it was
mate on g7.
Oh my goodness. Wesley's a devil.
Is there
bishop b3? He's got to move.
He wants to take, but the king runs away. And bishop e3 does nothing. Just take it.
Rook e3. Oh.
Queen c7. Watch out for h2. He
Not
moves
over
the king over.
yet.
It almost was.
Bishop's h5. He wants to play h5 and open up the.
Oh, I don't like that move.
Side.
I don't like e5.
His battery f4 Duda had also.
But this is looking good for black all of a sudden. Take a g4. Oh, he can't.
He's
not doing it.
He's got 0.
How did he get the move off?
I don't understand. This is unbelievable action in this first game. Queen e4.
Queen e6.
Battery back up. E6. Okay, he opens it up. That's correct. But now Duda stabilized it.
And don't blunder g7 with mate, right? That's the only thing. And black, despite being down a pawn, is better. Queen d6 and h4. I agree.
But he allowed g6 now. That's a... Okay. Finally an endgame, of course.
Who's better? White's up a pawn, but no,
probably
White's not up a pawn. Take on g6.
Now activity for black. Rook h7.
Okay, black looks great now.
Black might be winning.
Rook g2. Bishop d3. And then f2 check. King in the corner.
c6. He's got to get his pawn in motion.
How do you get the bishop?
h5 defending. c6. Wesley's got to push it.
Okay, rook c2 doesn't work.
g6.
Rook g6 only move. And then rook c6.
e8 is covered, so rook e8 is not possible. Wesley's got to make a move.
That is huge. He wins the pawn. And now black's on the pawn.
This might be a draw, though. Rook d5, rook g2.
I feel like we're auctioneers here. And then
I
now
do as well.
What happened? It's going to be a split. King e3. And how do you make progress?
Fortress. Well, either side could still blunder a bishop. Move the bishop accidentally, g6. Duda is going to try to win this. He's going to try to get his rook to the other side of the board, Robert. He's going to try to deliver a side check and get that king, pry it away from the bishop, but it's not easy to do that. Don't get mated. Bishop d4 was almost made.
But that's why I think Wesley's been really smart by putting his king on f4. That way, wherever the rook goes, the king goes to the opposite side.
Let me tell you, their hands are shaking. Mine are, and theirs are too. When you're moving the mouse, it's like you don't want a mouse slip here.
You know, it looks like I'm getting super red looking at this game, but I think that just my camera is doing funny things. So I'm pretty calm right now, honestly. I've been enjoying the action. I'm feeling really at home in my chair, though.
This is... This is amazing, and let's not forget this is the first game. We could not have asked for a better opening salvo to this incredible match, and they're still going. I mean, they're trying to, posturing here, but realistically, black just doesn't have any attempts even. The defense is very easy with that increment, particularly.
But I think that JKD is smart to play this on. We talked about how in the bullet portion, that's where he has his best chances. He's also up a pawn. So even if this were a classical game, why not play it on?
He's
the bishop on
down.
The bishop on h5 is defended and defends everything. There's no risk. Okay, they finally made
a draw. But no, and people shouldn't dismiss this.